so that I can check that you're all getting an audio feed. Lots of good mornings and hellos coming in, so I hope that's because you've heard me. No one's saying they can hear me at the moment. Well, fingers crossed that you can. So we've got people from all over the world, obviously here. It's okay, being asked to refresh your browsers. Is this possible if they can't hear me? So if you can hear me, can you say, you can hear me. Excellent. Thank you very much. Sorry, minor panic there as I thought the sound wasn't going through. Brilliant. Wonderful. So lots of people from all sorts of countries. I think the record at the moment is someone who's got up at 4 a.m. to attend the webinar. So we're very impressed here with that. Congratulations. Before we start at UK time, which is in about 4 minutes, I'm just going to give you some tips for today's webinar to make sure you get the most out of it. So, as I said, I'm just on audio. You will have a video feed when the presenters start in about 8 minutes time or so. The audio is really important, obviously. You need to be able to hear what we're saying. So please make sure you've got a good connection. Plug in headphones if you've got them. You'll be able to hear more clearly. And also make sure you're not running any other applications on your device. So if you've got anything else that's connecting to the internet, especially things like social media and Skype and so on, please switch them off, okay? This is because the webinar is live streamed. It uses YouTube. It takes up quite a lot of bandwidth on your internet connection, so you really need to make sure you don't have anything else running. If during the webinar you find that you can't hear or see, the best thing you can do is to reconnect. There's a button on your screen saying reconnect. Just click that and you'll leave the system and come back in again. And also, as I said, do check that you're not running other programs that might be interfering with the webinar. Okay, so as I also mentioned already, we use YouTube to stream this video. Now, you do need to make sure that this is allowed where you are and also on your device, or you will have problems. So do check that now before the webinar begins, and if there's anything you need to do to enable that, then make sure you do that straight away. Another thing that you will notice when we start the webinar and you start having lots of slides coming through is that sometimes the picture in those slides is not very clear at first. It can be a little bit sort of fuzzy and blurry. Don't worry, this is absolutely normal. This is because of the live streaming, and what happens is after a few seconds the picture becomes clearer. But because we're aware of this, we make sure that the presenters read out everything that appears on the screen, on the slides, in their audio, so that you'll be able to hear what's written on the slides as well as read it. So don't worry about that. It's normal, and we have covered it within the webinar. Now, for this webinar, we have a handout. Now, I hope you've already received the handout. It was sent to you with the email that you got. So you do need the handout during the webinar. Laura's just asked, do we need our video camera on? No, you don't, Laura. You just need to be able to watch, okay? So the handout, you need to be able to see this during the webinar. So either have it open on your device or print it out if that's going to be easier for you. If you haven't got the handout, then you can get it now. On your screen, there's a tab which says Offer. And if you click on that, you'll be able to download the handout now. Somebody has just asked, can we record the lecture for later reference? Well, you have no need to, Duong, because we actually record it for you, okay? And you will be able to watch the recording later. Okay, so don't need to worry about that. Right, so what time are we on? Oh, 9:59, very little time. We're about to start, so I won't keep talking too much longer. Ahmed is asking, how can we use the handout in the webinar? Ahmed, you will have instructions on how to use it. So when it's time to look at the handout, the presenter will tell you. Okay, so don't worry, you'll be told when you need to look at it. Right, it is 10 o'clock now, so we will officially start. Just a reminder for those of you who've just joined us that my name is Pippa and I'm only on audio. Don't worry that you can't see me for now. My role is to introduce the webinar and give you a quick orientation of the tools, and then I'll hand over to Steph Diamond-Bayer and Virgil Yerubino, who will tell you what every teacher should know about improving writing using digital skills. When they finish the presentation, I'll come back and talk to you quickly about some support material for teachers, and we'll finish off with a question and answer session. So just a quick reminder, if you've got headphones, do plug those in. Make sure, please, that you're not running any other applications that connect to the internet during the webinar. And please make sure that you have the handout as well, okay, which you can get by clicking on the Office tab at the bottom of the screen. You need to be able to see that during the webinar. Okay, so quickly to run through some of the tools that we'll use today. The main tool that we're going to use is the chat box. Now I can see obviously everybody is using that already. You're all introducing yourselves, which is great and wonderful to see where you're all from. Do please use this as well to type any comments that you have during the webinar or any questions that you might have. So if it's a question that we can answer straight away, then we'll type an answer into the chat box to you. But as I've mentioned, we will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So some of your questions will be saved for that session. So please don't worry if your question isn't answered straight away. We will come to it before the end. Now, if I've mentioned already, please make sure you've got the handout. That's in the Office tab at the bottom. And also during the webinar, we will have some activities for you to do. So sometimes the activity will ask you to type an answer into the chat box. That's quite straightforward. But sometimes there will be a multiple choice activity on a slide, and we'll have a poll for you to answer. So what will happen is you'll see a question on the screen with several different options and the letters A, B, C, etc., just like a normal multiple choice. And under the chat box, there will appear a list of the options, A, B, C, D, etc. So you need to look for that at the bottom of your screen. The presenter will ask you to choose one of the options, and we'd like to ask you to use the poll to answer the question. Don't type it into the chat box if you can, okay? We'll have a practice of this in a minute. Last thing before we move on is that the webinar is going to be recorded, so you will be sent an email with a link to that recording, and you'll be able to watch everything again. That's the slides, the video, and the audio. Just answered someone's question there. Yes, the session will be recorded. We will also send you a certificate of attendance and also a feedback form for you to give us your feedback on the webinar. So before I hand over to Steph and Virgil, let's quickly find out a bit about you. So on screen, we have a slide to find out a bit about who you are. So please tell us who you are by choosing one of the letters on the poll buttons, which you can see under the chat box. So look at the bottom left side of your screen. It says polls. And there are 4 options. A, I'm a teacher. B, I'm a coordinator or director of studies. C, I'm a learner. Or D, I'm a parent. So please click on the answer which applies to you. Great. Lots of answers coming through. In fact, almost everybody is a teacher, huge proportion, 95%, 5% coordinators, and at the moment, 1% learners and no parents. But that's brilliant, actually, because this is a webinar really directed at teachers, and I'm sure that you will find masses of useful ideas and tips from today's session. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Right. One last question is to find out where you are. We'd like to know where you're joining us from today. So if you have a look at the word cloud on the screen, this shows the countries that you come from. It seems that we should have lots of teachers from Russia, Greece, Spain, Italy, Switzerland. Those are our top registration countries. But please type in the chat box and tell us where you're from. So we've got people coming from India, Spain, Poland, Vietnam, France, Russia, Germany, Cyprus, Kazakhstan, Mexico, gosh, all over the place. Some of you clearly have got up extremely early to join us. Thank you very much indeed for that. We appreciate your dedication. Right, wonderful. What an amazing list of countries coming through the chat. So that's it from me for now. I'm going to pass over to your presenters for today, Steph Diamond-Beyer and Virgil Yerubino.
Thank you, Pippa. Hello, my name's Steph Diamond-Beyer and I'm a teacher, trainer and materials writer.
And I'm Virgil Yerubino and I manage teacher development courses at Cambridge English Language Assessment.
Today we're going to share with you some ideas for improving writing by using digital tools. Let's begin our webinar by going through the aims of today's session. In this session, we will be looking at writing and thinking about the features of good writing and how we can use digital tools to support learners with these. We'll look at some practical tools, including code readers, infographics, and mind map generators, and collaborative planning and writing tools. Here's a question. What skills do learners need to be successful writers? I'm going to show you some skills, and I'd like you to think about which one your learners need most. The skills are understanding the goal, which means understanding what's required of them by the task, and also for the level that they're working at. Reviewing and editing, which is the ability to check work and identify areas for improvement. Producing a first draft, so being able to create that first text. Producing a final draft, which is polishing and making the text as good as it can be. Coming up with ideas, that is the initial brainstorm of content for the text. Organising ideas, which involves getting the ideas into a logical order. Having the motivation to write, so wanting to actually produce the text. Now, these skills are not in any kind of order, but which one do your learners need most? Which one do they struggle with? You can type ideas in the chat box. So let's have a look, Virgil.
Straight away, we're seeing people say coming up with ideas and motivation are
Motivation and
challenges.
ideas is being mentioned a lot. Some people are saying all of them.
Yes.
Most of them. Ideas, drafting and planning seems to be an issue as well.
Yeah.
Motivation's being mentioned quite a lot.
Motivation's very common. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. There are many different issues that learners face, and in today's webinar, we're going to look at each of these skills and ways in which digital tools can help learners. The way we teach writing tends to fall into one of two approaches, product or process. Here's what the product approach covers. When taking a product approach, we often look at how well students are able to produce specific sub-skills in writing, such as formatting appropriately, using mechanical aspects such as spelling and handwriting, and applying cohesive devices well. These can help students to understand the goal and produce their final draft. By taking a process approach, we work to ensure learners know how to plan according to the given purpose and to organise and draft their writing successfully. Both of these approaches have their place, but this webinar will focus mainly on the process of writing and how we can help learners at each stage by using digital tools. Speaking of digital tools, how much do you use technology to develop learners' writing skills? Have a look at the three choices on the screen and vote on the option that best describes what you do. So number 1, yes, I use it. I use technology a lot. Number 2, yes, sometimes, but I would prefer to use technology more and in different ways. And number 3, no, not very much. Can see some votes coming in.
Yeah. Okay, there's in lead position, we've got people saying that they use it sometimes, but followed quite closely by not very much.
So we've got the smallest number saying that they use technology a lot. Okay, thank you very much. Writing is often seen as more demanding and less enjoyable than, for example, speaking. One of the skills we looked at earlier was having the motivation to write, and digital tools can actually help us with this, as we'll see. Before we do that, I'd like to make a very important general point about using digital tools for teaching and learning. When we use digital tools in teaching, we need to be certain that their use is beneficial, both for the learners and the teacher. Make sure that the digital activity supports the outcome, that you aren't just doing it because it's new or because it exists. The activity should also support the outcome effectively and efficiently. We'd accept that it takes time to set up a digital tool for the first time that you use it. But if it continues to be difficult to set up or to run, it might be better to use other techniques. It isn't going to work if setting up a task takes longer than the learners spend completing it. With these golden rules in mind, let's consider our key skills for successful writing and how digital tools might help.
We'll begin with understanding the goal of writing. This means learners understanding what's required of them, both in terms of the task and of the outcomes. By outcomes, I mean the language used, the content, the communicative effect, and organisation of the text. I'm sure many of you will have recognised by now that I'm talking about the assessment criteria. Let's explore this with an example. Here's a task. You can see this task and the sample answer as well on your handout, Sample Writing. This task is to write an essay. The question asks the learner to write about pollution and damage to the environment, and if they feel these problems can be solved. This is a task set for B2 level learners. So let's have a look at a sample answer. This sample answer is also on the handout, Sample Writing. Take a minute to read the answer. If you haven't already, you can download the handout using the link at the bottom of the screen. So I'll just give you a moment to read the answer. Now, think about the good qualities of this answer. What do you think the writer has done well? Remember, this is at B2 level. Here are 3 possible answers. They're also on your handout, Sample Writing, see Task A. Which of these options do you think best summarises the good points of the writing? Choose 1, 2, or 3. Here are the options. Option 1, relevant content, clear opinion, register appropriate, well organised, with wide range of vocabulary and minimal errors. Option 2, relevant content, excellent grammar with no errors, well-linked paragraphs and coherent arguments with opinions stated. Or option 3, clear opinion, well-organised paragraphs, register appropriate, wide range of vocabulary with no errors. Please vote now.
There's a few people saying they haven't had time to read it. Don't worry, just give it a skim read and see what you can glean from that.
You can look on your handout again if you like.
So number 1 is in the lead at the moment. Most people are saying relevant content, clear opinion, register appropriate. Slightly less votes for number 3.
Okay. Yeah, about 56% of you are saying number 1. And in fact, the correct answer is number 1. The writing has relevant content to the task, expresses a clear opinion using appropriate register, is well organised, and uses a wide range of vocabulary with minimal errors. The linking of the paragraphs could be improved, so it doesn't fit option 2. It also has some errors in grammar and vocabulary, so it doesn't match options 2 and 3. These errors don't impede communication, though, so this is a good level for Cambridge English First and would also be a good model to show students. This is a writing question from the Cambridge English First writing paper. You can find the task, sample answer, and feedback in the Handbook for Teachers via the Cambridge English website. We'll give you the link in a moment. Identifying these features of success is not just useful for teachers, but is an excellent way to help learners know what to aim for. A useful technique to help them improve is to give them lots of models of good writing, whether email, report, review, essay, or similar. This helps them to understand the features of different genres. You can also show them the criteria which will be used to assess them, either for classwork or in a formal proficiency test. They can then understand more easily what's expected and where they need to improve, and they can start to use the criteria themselves. Of course, we can give them handouts in class, but we can also use digital tools to exploit resources in different ways.
So if you want your students to use the task and answer that we've just looked at, you can make it easy for them by giving them the links in a way that's accessible. The actual link to the Cambridge English First Handbook is on the slide. As you can see, it's long and difficult to copy. Instead, you could use a QR code. This is also on the handout Sample Writing. You may already have a QR code reader on your phone or device. If not, it only takes a few moments to download a free app. Learners simply click on the app and then scan the code. It can take them to a website, image, PDF, YouTube video, or similar. You can easily generate these codes using free online websites. They're very simple to use. We've put some QR codes on the handout for you to try out later. Or you could give them a shortened URL. Again, there are lots of free, easy-to-use internet sites to help you create these. This one is also on your handout. As you can see, it's easier and shorter than the original link. So that's how you can make it easy for learners to access online models. But how could you use them? Well, as suggested, you can use them to provide models of different texts for learners to analyse. Essays, reviews, messages, anything you like. You could upload samples with annotations or questions for analysis too. You could put these on your own web page or a cloud-based platform for learners to download. We'll look at cloud-based platforms in more detail a little later. You can annotate the task with questions, encouraging learners to really think about the task and what they're being asked to do, or give them a set of questions they need to answer about the task. Alternatively, you could use QR codes and shortened URLs to set up a writing task. For example, if students are going to write a review of a film or some music, you could use codes or shortened URLs to link them to trailers or music videos. If they have to write a discursive essay about the environment, you could link them to resources about the effects of pollution, or even to a web page or site you've set up with your own materials.
Now let's think about another of the skills for successful writers: coming up with ideas. A common complaint among learners is that they don't know what to write and find it difficult to think of ideas. One way that teachers deal with this in the classroom is to encourage learners to collaborate, brainstorming ideas together. Digital tools can also help learners to collaborate more effectively outside of the classroom as well. Firstly, websites can provide a useful stimulus for learners. Sites such as TED.com have thousands of talks on different topics, including interactive transcripts that learners can follow. There is now a whole family of resources, including TED-Ed, which has short educational animations with lesson plans attached. Teachers can type in a keyword such as pollution and give learners a shortened URL or QR code so they can access one or more of the related talks. There's an example on the slide and also on the handout, Sample Writing. TED also has a Twitter feed, which has a lot of interesting discussions, and your students, if old enough, can follow TED on Twitter or share ideas via this type of social media. This will keep them in touch with current discussions, giving them better ideas for their own essays, but will also give them writing practice by interacting on social media. Another site full of interesting videos and discussions with a less academic tone is SoulPancake, which links through to videos on YouTube. This is full of topics and ideas that might be useful starting points for writing work. There are many resources on the Cambridge English website specifically designed for learners. You can find the link on the handout Useful Websites. These resources offer content that has been graded for level. For example, here you can see a listening activity aimed at B1 to B2 level, reviewing a theatre performance. This could be a good starting point for learners who are going to write a review of their own.
Cambridge English Language Assessment has also just launched its new digital teacher site, where you can find more ideas about how to use digital tools in the classroom. Perhaps you know of other helpful sites that will keep students informed, give them fresh ideas, and provide some interesting topics. Write into the text box now any sites that you think are worth sharing. So we're looking for sites that have got lots of interesting content to give students ideas.
Yeah.
Let's see what people are coming up with. Okay, so Edmodo has been suggested. Yeah, that's a great site. It's more like a classroom, really, so they could certainly share ideas there. National Geographic, that's got lots of content on it, lots of brilliant films.
Yeah, BBC Bite Size, all of these are really good options.
Excellent. Flojo is excellent. Someone's mentioned Write and Improve, which we're looking at later, I think.
We are, yeah.
Yeah, Breaking News English is good. BBC again.
BBC is very popular, yeah.
Okay, and Edpuzzle. You can have a look at all of the ideas later on the chat box to pick up some new ideas. So that's great. Thank you very much for all of those ideas. It will help learners to spend some homework time on websites such as these before they start working on their writing. They'll feel more confident about the topic in the writing task when they see it. This brings us to the next skill for successful writers: having the motivation to write. Learners often feel that the kind of writing we ask them to do in class bears no relation to anything they write outside of school or in their normal lives. Increasing confidence by giving learners ideas through digital media is one way to help. But let's take a minute now to look at some other tools which can help in different ways. One way to motivate learners is to make the outcome something that appeals to them. There are digital tools that can help to do this, using their own ideas, images and materials, and even working collaboratively in groups. For example, they could create mini books or comic strips. There are free and paid for apps online which they can share with the class. Allowing the learners the freedom to create their own content and use their own ideas without the constraints of the task can sometimes help them to gain confidence in their writing skills. Learners can create imaginary social media pages about topics they have studied, a book or film they like, or a person they admire. They can then interact with likes, comments, and postings. They can also work collaboratively to create newspaper pages, including photographs, headlines, and text. These could be about a local event, something happening in the school, or related to a topic they're studying in class. Some examples of websites for these tools are given on the handout, Useful Websites. But you can find others online by searching through your browser. These are just examples. Find genres that appeal to your learners, and you'll almost certainly find an online tool which will enable them to produce a text.
Let's go back and consider another of our key skills for successful writers. We've talked about motivation and coming up with ideas, but what about organising those ideas? Organisation is one of the assessment criteria used in assessing writing for Cambridge English exams, and we all know how important organisation is in a well-written text. What have you observed in your learners' writing? There are 4 options on the screen. Choose the one that best describes your learner's approach to organisation. Here are the options. 1. They only have 1 or 2 ideas, which they repeat. 2. They have good ideas, but they jump from one to another and back again. 3. They try to organise their ideas, but it's not very successful. Or 4. Their writing is usually well organised. So please answer on the poll.
Okay, so the first 2 options are running pretty much neck and neck there.
Yeah.
Slightly higher on 2 now.
Okay, it looks like, yeah, about 40% of people are saying that they have good ideas but jump from one to another and back again, would you say?
Yeah, but we've still got issues with people having only a few ideas or bad organisation of ideas. Okay.
Yeah, options 1 to 3 are all problems that learners can have when writing. And often it's because they are too quick to start writing their text and aren't willing to take time to plan their writing, which can lead to writing that lacks coherence or flow. They need to record their ideas and organise them into a coherent plan. By allowing learners to use digital tools collaboratively, you encourage them to complete this stage of the writing process more effectively. This approach not only allows mixed ability classes to work well together, but also enables learners to see the importance of planning. It also makes planning more engaging for those learners who are good at it already. Let's go through the problems and identify some solutions. Let's take the first problem, repeating the same idea. We've already looked at digital tools which can help learners to generate ideas, but they also need to have a way to record the ideas they come across. This is something which web-based applications such as online bulletin boards can do very well, and there are plenty to choose from. You can find examples on your handout, Useful Websites. The screenshot on the slide is from one site, Diigo, which allows you to bookmark web pages and texts, as well as highlight and annotate them. On sites like this, learners can copy links, pieces of text, photographs, video clips, and more onto a single web page. They are very visual and can be manipulated. These pages can be shared among a group of students or even the whole class. So before writing, learners can have the task of producing a page of ideas, which they share with others. Another problem is that once learners have collected their ideas, they need to organise them into some kind of structure so that they avoid jumping from one idea to another. Individuals have different ways in which they like to plan. Some people like visual depictions and diagrams, others like lists, and some find spidergrams or mind maps helpful. So it's worth spending time exploring different planning techniques and encouraging learners to choose the one they find suits them best. Let's look at some tools. Some learners like diagrams and flowcharts. This is an example of an online tool which allows learners to create their own charts and show connections between ideas. This is key in helping learners to write better structured texts. They need to identify which ideas are related and in which way. The link to this site is on the handout Useful Websites. For learners who like spidergrams or mind maps, there are free online tools for this too. The image on the screen is an example of a mind map about music. You can see that the map can include visuals and learners can connect related ideas or add examples. Our third problem was that learners aren't always successful in organising their ideas.
In part, this is practice. Planning a text is a skill that needs to be learned. So teachers need to spend some class time on this and provide structured activities. These can be done online. For example, the whole class could produce an online bulletin board with ideas, and then individual learners could create their own plan using their preferred method. All of these tools can be shared, so then each learner can share their plan with the teacher or with one of their peers, and they can comment on each other's plans. Alternatively, learners could work in groups to create their plans, or the teacher could set up a map and invite learners to add to it or reorganise the elements. Then they can download the final result to use when they write their first draft. Let's move on now to talk about writing that first draft. If you've worked with learners on understanding what's required of them, coming up with ideas and planning and organising those ideas, writing the first draft should be a lot easier. And I'm going to surprise you now, because I'm going to suggest that you might want to ask your learners to write out their first draft by hand. Why do you think it might be useful for learners to use traditional handwriting to do this? Can you write your ideas in the chat box?
So that is an interesting suggestion.
Yeah, bearing in mind we're talking about digital tools, why would we start off with old-fashioned handwriting? Let's see what people think.
Exams, says Caroline.
Yes, that's potentially a key reason. Somebody else has said they can't copy-paste.
Yeah, it's very good, very, very true.
Somebody else has got a nice idea. Inge has said they can concentrate on their ideas rather than the tools.
Absolutely. And Raluca says visual memory might be improved when you're handwriting.
Yeah, Katerina has suggested they might feel more comfortable doing it. Although I think especially young learners are quite comfortable digitally nowadays.
They are, aren't they? Yeah.
Okay, so there's lots of ideas coming in there. Thank you for those. Some really interesting ones. Here are my reasons for suggesting this, and some of them you've covered with your suggestions. Firstly, in writing by hand, learners won't be able to use the computer to do automatic checks on their spelling and grammar. They have to do this for themselves. So they'll need to think more carefully about the language and the spelling they're using. This is also likely to make them think about the suggestions that spell checkers make, which are not always correct. Secondly, learners often have to handwrite in exams, as you mentioned. So it is important that they practice doing this and make sure their handwriting is as legible as possible. And finally, not all types of writing suit being produced on computers or devices, such as notes or lists. So learners need to practice these as well. That said, there are digital tools which can help the writing of the first draft.
One of these is online dictionaries, such as this one, the online Cambridge Dictionary. This is a great tool if students want to check information about a word, check how it's used and common collocations, or find synonyms and other related words. This can help learners to expand their vocabulary range and accuracy. It can also be really useful later in the writing process when editing, which I'll talk about in a moment. Up to now, we've assumed that learners will write their draft on their own, but as we've already seen, collaboration is made easier with digital tools, and I've got a tool I'd like to introduce you to. This is an infographic. You can see this example on your handout using infographics. Infographics work with learners because they're used to multimodality. In other words, they are used to processing lots of different media simultaneously, not just static pages, but a mix of text, image, and audiovisual material. Infographics can represent complex ideas, and using infographics tunes into learners' cognitive approaches and also engages those put off by the idea of writing text only. The ready-made infographic here is about learning a foreign language. How could you use this to develop your learners' writing skills? Write your ideas in the text box.
Okay, so lots of nice images on an infographic, nice sort of blocks of text.
Yeah,
and
they're
imagery.
very engaging, aren't they?
They definitely are. Somebody here has suggested it can help them organise thoughts.
Writing a report suggests Charla, and brainstorming suggests Raphael.
Terry has suggested it provides real data, which it can do. That's good.
Yeah.
And Anna said it's appealing.
That's very important, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And they could produce one as a plan. Somebody suggested that.
I like that idea. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to share some ideas I had about how you could use this as part of a collaborative writing activity. Learners could pick out key ideas and plan paragraphs, giving them practice in identifying key information and in organising it. Learners could be allocated different sections of the chart and write it into a full paragraph. They could then share their paragraphs and give feedback to each other. Together, they could then structure the paragraphs into a complete text, adding linkers and working on referencing to make the content coherent. This could also work as an information gap, where learners could summarise elements of the chart, and the rest of the class could then identify which part they have summarised. If each section of the infographic is seen as a potential paragraph, the learners could practice writing topic sentences for each section. They can share these and then add evidence or examples to expand their ideas. So tools like this have many uses and help to provide stimulus for learners' writing. For those learners who find writing a text difficult, there are also websites which allow you to make your own infographics. We've listed some on the handout useful websites for you to explore after the webinar. Learners use the visuals to support their writing, gradually moving towards more text and fewer graphics. You'll have noticed that I've been talking about a first draft. One of the key skills for successful writing is being able to review and edit your work. So let's discuss that now.
So reviewing and editing are crucial in writing. Think about when you write an important email. Do you send it without reading it through, improving it and checking it for silly mistakes? I know I don't. In a second language, reviewing and editing is even more important, but teachers don't always give it the attention it needs. So how do you feel about reviewing and editing writing work? There are 4 options on the screen. Choose the one that best describes how you feel about reviewing and editing writing with learners. Here are the options. So number 1 is I trust my learners to review and edit their work before they hand it in. Number 2, I mark up mistakes and possible areas for improvement for my learners, but I'm not sure how many of them actually improve their work. Number 3, I've never tried asking learners to review each other's work, as I'm not sure it would give them or they would give each other useful feedback. And number 4, I don't have enough time to spend in class on reviewing and editing writing work. So have a look and choose your
We
reference.
have a clear consensus already. About 87% people are saying that they do mark up mistakes, possible areas of improvement, but they're not sure if it really helps learners improve.
Okay, so we've got the teachers are doing the majority of the reviewing and editing, and very few people taking the other choices. In fact, there are different ways that learners' work can be reviewed. They can give the text to a teacher who can suggest improvements or indicate mistakes. They can have their work peer reviewed, usually with some kind of guidance, or they can use a checklist to review their own work. Each is useful and can be supported by digital tools. Let's see if some of the ideas I'm going to give you can help you to feel more confident about the review process. One of the great tools for teachers to emerge from the internet is the cloud-based platform. These platforms allow anyone to write a text online in a word processing program. The text is then stored in the cloud or online, so anyone can access it from anywhere. There's a range of these available for free. Check the handout Useful Websites for some suggestions. Once you've created and saved a text in the cloud, you can share it with other people. They can add to it, write notes on it, or comment on it. There are lots of ways that we can exploit this in our writing training. Can you think of some ideas now and type them into your text box? Okay, so using the cloud platforms to collaborate, let's see what people are coming up with. Somebody suggested peer reviewing works much better than teachers' corrections, which is nice to hear.
Yeah.
Definitely has its place, and it can be done if you're sharing the documents online. Somebody's mentioned Google Docs.
Yeah, Amelia points out sharing and offering extra ideas is something that can come out of that.
Somebody else has suggested peer editing, Airphilly, I think it is.
Yep.
As a way of students working together.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of comments about sharing ideas and peer editing.
That is one of the things that's made much easier with cloud-based platforms, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it does make it easier for students to work together as well as working with a teacher. So these are great ideas and suggestions for platforms. I can see some of you already use this tool in your teaching from your comments. Here are a few ideas of ours. You could add template documents for completion. This might provide a framework for the students to fill in. This would be useful for learners who are less confident or are learning to write in a genre new to them. As learners grow in confidence, the template can become more of a skeleton or structure which learners use to organise their ideas. You can upload a task and ask learners to plan their answer together in small groups before they write the text in full. You can supply the structure of the answer and ask learners to work in groups to supply the contents for each paragraph before they write the text in full. You can provide an answer with errors for students to spot and correct. These could be areas you've been working on in class. They should reflect a range of the outcomes learners are expected to reach and not be just grammatical or vocabulary errors. Finally, learners can write their drafts, then share them with a small group who give feedback by suggesting improvements or identifying errors. Again, the learners need to be aware of the expectations and think about content, communication, and organisation, as well as language. We've talked a bit about how you can monitor your learners' editing using online tools. What about encouraging self-review?
By using word processing tools such as tracking changes or highlighting text, teachers and learners can give and receive feedback on their writing. The teacher can monitor this quite easily and check what learners are doing in response to the feedback. You might want to provide them with a marking key to use. For example, when making feedback notes, they can write WW for wrong word, P for punctuation, and so on. If all students use this regularly, it can become a very effective tool and a good habit. On the slide, you can see a screenshot of the new Cambridge Digital Teacher website, where you can find detailed training on how to use these platforms for feedback. The link is on the handout Useful Websites as well. You can use simple online scheduling tools, which are usually used to set up meetings, to encourage self-review. These are free and easy to use. There are several links on the handout Useful Websites. The screenshot on the slide is of Doodle. Normally, the organizer sets up the poll with dates, and the participants insert their names and indicate their availability. However, instead of dates, you can include areas that you would like students to review, creating a sort of checklist. Learners can identify if they think they have done this well, or if they need to improve by adding a tick into the features they are happy with. Or alternatively, learners can do this for each other's work. In class, they can then discuss what they think they could do and improve and how. If you feel that time is your enemy and you would struggle to find time to work on reviewing and editing, there is a tool for you too. The tool, which is called Write and Improve, also encourages learners to develop some autonomy and get into the habit of practicing additional writing at home, editing it and correcting it. The link is on the handout Useful Websites. Write and Improve is free for students to use. There is a whole set of tasks for different levels. For example, here you can see some beginner level tasks. The learner simply chooses a task and types their answer. The site tells them when they have written enough text, and they can then click on Check to get some feedback. The feedback highlights their text to guide the student to make improvements. They can rewrite and resubmit as many times as they want to see if they have improved their work. There are many benefits to working in this way. Can you suggest some? Write into the text box now.
Okay, let's see. So we've got correcting the students by helping them to review their own mistakes from LIPSA.
Yep.
And suggestion of autonomy.
Yeah. I like Anna's point that it saves paper. That's interesting.
Good for the environment.
Of course.
What else do we have?
Yeah, Jeanne says they don't feel judged, and that's a very good point as well.
It allows students to learn at their own pace from Sheila, I think it was.
Yeah.
Also a very good point. Okay,
Nadine says that their initiative is rewarded, and that's a good point too. Yeah, thanks very much for that. These are really good ideas. Here are some of the advantages we think the tool offers. It gives individual feedback, so the learner can work on their own specific problems. It teaches learners to work autonomously without relying on the teacher. This means they will become more independent and effective in their writing, and also means the teacher isn't overloaded with marking. It is also a tool that learners can use at their own pace at home, which means it works well if you have mixed ability classes.
That's the end of our presentation. I hope you've got lots of ideas to take away with you. Let's think about what we have discussed today. We've considered the skills for successful writing, which include understanding what the features of good writing are, the goal. We looked at ways to help learners with all stages of writing, from feeling motivated to write and generating ideas to organising these ideas and creating a text. We've talked about reviewing and editing, which always needs to consider all of the outcomes. And throughout the webinar, I've shown you digital tools to help with all these things. Don't forget that links to lots of useful websites are on the handout Useful Websites. In a moment, we'll answer your questions, so do send in your questions now so that we can start reading through them. First, Pippa is going to show you how to find some additional resources to support you and your learners.
Great, thank you very much, Steph and Virgil. That was a really fantastically interesting webinar. Loads and loads of ideas for you. Just a reminder that I'm only on audio. You can't see me, so don't worry, the video's gone. I'm just going to talk to you about some extra support for teachers, and then Steph and Virgil will come back and answer the questions that you've been sending in, and any others that come in the meantime. So both Steph and Virgil mentioned the website The Digital Teacher. This is a new professional development website to help language teachers to develop their digital skills. It's free. It's designed to help you make the most of all the opportunities that technology brings for teachers and learners. You can find out here about the Cambridge English Digital Framework, and I think this is quite relevant because some of you seem to have more experience than others. So this is a description of the key competencies for teaching effectively with technology. And it's been developed in consultation with practicing language teachers and trainers. And the idea is that you can explore the categories, there are 6 of them, and test your own digital skills as a teacher to find your starting point, which will then help you to decide on the direction that your digital professional development should take. So once you've done that, you can then develop your teaching in those areas that you've identified. And online, you'll find bite-sized training, practical tips, and ready-to-use lesson plans. And someone was saying that they would like to be able to see how to use the cloud with feedback. So you can find that on the Digital Teacher. You can also find digital learning products that have been reviewed by experts and then which you can try out in class. There are blogs on the site which allow you to follow what's going on in the wider digital world by reading about the latest trends which impact on language teaching. And you can follow what other teachers are doing in their digital classrooms as they experiment with technology. In addition to this, you can always find free resources for teachers on our Teaching English website. Somebody asked about handbooks. If you go to Teaching English, you can find them there as well. There's information about our teaching qualifications, information about the Cambridge English Teaching Framework, and lots more webinars. There's also a newsletter, and you can sign up for it to receive updates and new articles. Right, that's it from me. I'll pass you back to Steph and Virgil, who are ready to answer your questions now. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you, Pippa. Let's now answer questions that have been suggested by some of you. There's lots coming in at the moment, lots of interesting questions.
Yeah.
Which one would you like to go for first, Virgil?
Well, yeah, like you say, there were quite a lot, weren't there? Alison points out that learners don't necessarily get much time during an exam for organising and planning.
Yeah, there's a few comments on exams I saw coming through the chat box when we were talking about them. So I think you need to separate out whether you're working on their writing skills in general to improve their writing performance, or whether you're focused on preparing them for an exam. And I think in both cases, planning and drafting is important. Lots of students do the same thing. They say, well, I don't have much time in an exam to plan. If you do give students lots of practice in class using planning approaches, whether you do it digitally or normally, they get better and better at it and faster. And actually, it's time saving in an exam. If you actually put aside 5 minutes to plan your ideas, you have a real sense of where you're heading with your writing, and the actual writing of the first draft happens much quicker, I think. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's time well spent to put that 5 minutes in at the start, isn't it?
Yeah.
Essentially, it's saving you from wasting the time later on.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I would still recommend that you get learners into the habit, because the more they do it, the quicker they'll get.
Yeah, absolutely. Bianca has said, what about with adults? Her learners are mostly over 30. How can we get them to use digital tools, perhaps when they just prefer the traditional approach? I would just sort of start by saying, well, it's up to you, first of all, to be the champion of that, and also to make those judgments about what is actually going to work for your learners. The outcomes are the most important. So you need to be the one that's assessing what's going to be useful to you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think we've given you lots of ideas, but always remember, as with any teaching process, it's all about your context, your students, and your outcomes. I mean, if you've got adult students who are nervous about using tools, I'd suggest you use some very simple ones to start with. We talked about accessing platforms just to give them motivation. I think even adults are quite happy to go on YouTube and watch a video. So you
Absolutely.
could start by kind of getting them to do things like that. And also, don't be afraid to demo things. So, for example, Google Docs, where you can put up a document and they can then edit collaboratively. If you do a little practice run in your school, that can work quite well. And if you don't have computers, then not all students, but many students nowadays do have tablets or phones that they can bring in with them. So again, I think it's about making an informed choice for your particular context, and then encouragement, as you said, be a champion. Nowadays, we're in the world of 21st century skills, and it's all about operating digitally and having digital literacies.
Absolutely. I mean, you know your learners best, and it will definitely help to have a look at the tools in depth yourself in advance and think about how is that going to work. Okay, I saw a question here from Desiree, who says different cultures have different ways of working, and in Turkey, for instance, she suggested that, or at least in her classes, collaboration hasn't been encouraged. So that would almost seem strange to her learners.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a bit like the question we've just taken. It's for me, it's a question of being a champion, gradually introducing the concept. Again, nowadays in teaching and learning, we're moving away from teachers as a sort of source of information and moving towards teachers as facilitators who help learners develop critical thinking skills, digital literacies, all the soft skills that are expected of people in this time. So nowadays there is an emphasis on being able to collaborate, communicate effectively. So although it may seem strange to your students, I think it's something that is worth championing and gradually pushing forward. I mean, one way to think of it is it's not very much different to getting students to talk together in a classroom. We're just moving it onto a different delivery platform.
Absolutely, yeah.
Somebody here has mentioned something about write and improve and saying it's not always, it doesn't do absolutely everything that they would do as a teacher. What would you say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a lot of questions about write and improve. Of course, it's just one of the tools that's available to you. It can't possibly replace the teacher on its own.
Yeah.
It's something that you can use, and you need to know what it's good at and what are its limitations. I saw questions about whether it's improving over time. Absolutely. It is. The more that it's used, the better it gets at providing the feedback. And just to clarify, it is a tool that is providing feedback automatically. The computer is providing that feedback by applying all of our research into its algorithms. So it's good, it's getting better, but it isn't the answer to everything.
Okay. Somebody else has asked whether websites provide writing practice to advanced learners. There's been a few questions about kind of differences in levels. I think a lot of the tools that we've shown you are actually very flexible. For example, the QR readers. If you create codes, you can take learners to all sorts of different sites. There are lots of online websites that have materials suitable for advanced learners and beginners. And so you could use the tools to kind of tailor what you're delivering very specifically to your learners, I think. And people asking about models, there are lots of model essays on the Cambridge website.
Absolutely, yeah. Just have a look on your handout, useful websites, and the Cambridge English website is a great place to go, where you'll find a lot of free resources that will help you, including model answers.
Okay, so somebody's asking about handwriting here. I'm not sure what the question is, but obviously that's the one thing that digital can't do, is improve their handwriting. And I do think it is important that you can things that you line with students to additional methods, able to check spelling, but also in writing in real time, because people don't do it so much now. And I've heard students say actually they found it physically quite difficult. Their hands ached because they don't do it regularly.
Yes.
So especially with younger learners, do encourage some handwriting as well as all these wonderful tools we've been looking at.
Yeah, of course, as we said before, a lot of exams are handwritten. And everything should be used in moderation. We don't have to make everything become digital all at once. You need to use the tools where they're going to be appropriate.
And Maria here has just said something which I think is perfect. At the moment, I think the teachers to use the resources make the difference. The message is that these are simply tools to support you as a teacher. And decision-making still falls back into the teacher's hands to decide which of them are the most appropriate for their specific context and their specific learners.
Absolutely. Okay.
Have we got time for one more?
That's one more. Well, Ali Reza says, how can we encourage students to use digital tools? Which is similar to the question before, of course, just widening it out. I mean, students, especially younger students, will be very used to this sort of tool already. They're going to be using it in their personal lives. And one of the nice things about digital tools is they often come hand in hand with being more engaging and more appealing, and using a variety of different kinds of media. So I would focus on those sorts of benefits as a way of encouraging your students.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much for attending today. We hope you found it useful. We look forward to seeing you at our future webinars. The next webinar coming up is on using digital tools for continuous professional development on the 19th and 21st of June. Thank you.